Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Mike Chimicella, and I serve as the 2020 Chair of the Board for the Ohio Contractors Association. I would like to welcome you to the 102nd Annual Membership Business Meeting. I will now call the meeting
Oh, this is a very different
from the prior years. We will do our best to cover material we have historically addressed. Each registrant attendee should have received an email that included the meeting agenda, prior year minutes, and items that we will be voting on. We will be using the polling feature in Zoom to tally votes. As always, a majority vote will approve the motion. A video of this meeting will be added to the OCA's YouTube webpage early next week so that all members may view the proceedings of the meeting. As always, should you have additional questions regarding anything discussed today, whether it's during the meeting or after, please do not hesitate to give myself or Chris Runyon a call to address those questions. At the end of the formal business meeting and prior to the awards and recognition presentation, there will be a time on the agenda for matters offered by membership. Should you have any questions at that time, we will try to address them. Please use the Q&A feature on your Zoom screen at any time during the meeting and type those questions in. As I have just mentioned, you should have received a copy of last year's meeting minutes via email. At this time, if there are any questions regarding the minutes, please present those in the Q&A box. So use your Q&A box should you have any questions concerning the minutes. I'll pause here for a minute to see what we get. Any questions concerning the minutes? I'll pause here for a minute to see what we get. Okay, seeing none, please use the poll to vote on your acceptance of past year's meeting minutes. Yeah. Anyone voting? Anyone voting? We are. Okay. We're waiting on tallies. Okay. So we're all good. Thank you for voting. The minutes are approved. Now I'd like to introduce Steve Sanderher. Every one of us in our businesses have been profoundly impacted by what is going on in Washington, D.C. We are fortunate to have Chief Executive Officer of the Associated General Contractors of America, Steve Sanderher, as a guest with us this morning to review a number of the recent events that have transpired in Washington and provide us with an educated guess on how this transition to a new administration and a reformed Congress may influence us in the future. Stephen Sanderher joined the AGC of America staff in 1984 as Assistant Director of Collective Bargaining Services. From 1986 to 1989, he served as AGC's Director of Congressional Relations. He then went on to practice law with the firm of Thompson, Mann, and Hudson in Washington, D.C. from 1989 to 1990, and served as Labor and Small Business Counsel for the National Association of Home Builders from 1990 to 1991. He rejoined AGC as Executive Director of Congressional Relations in 1991 and was promoted to Chief Executive Officer in 1997. Currently, as Chief Executive Officer, his role is to maintain relations with AGC's 90 chapters nationwide, coordinate government relation activities, and enhance AGC's involvement with business coalitions. A Capitol Hill newspaper, The Hill, listed Steve as the top lobbyist for the last 10 years, representing the only commercial construction industry on the top lobbyists of 2009 to 2019 lists. Steve's session will provide an overview of AGC of America's activity through the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond, including advocacy efforts, legislative priorities, labor and employment policy outlook, analysts of election results, a preview of what the new Congress and administration has in store for the construction industry, and more. Thank you for joining us today, Steve. The screen is yours now.
Okay. Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone. Just a footnote to that introduction, Mike. I just got word today that the Hill named me again as a top lobbyist, but it's really not naming me. It's naming the really effective and experienced team that we have in DC. I'm just a quarterback of a really good team, and so we were honored to get that recognition yet again. So, David, if we could put the PowerPoint up, please. Is the PowerPoint on the screen and I just can't see it? Can anybody hear me? Okay, there it is. Okay, so as you can see, the title of my presentation is A Year of Uncertainty Ends Without Clarity, and I think that's an apt description of all of our experience for this year. And I'll demonstrate how profound that is in a few minutes. So if we go to the next slide, please.
I can see the presentation.
So I want to give an update on the goings on with regard to the Paycheck Protection Program. Recently, the Small Business Administration announced a new loan necessity questionnaire for borrowers who took out loans in excess of or equal to $2 million. Since that time, it's been reported to us by some members that they got loans less than $2 million, and yet their lender sent them the questionnaire. We have a number of problems with this form. First of all, the whole focus of the eligibility for PPP loans enacted in the CARES Act was that employers that met the size standard and faced business uncertainty were eligible to receive the loans. There was no consideration about your liquidity, your access to liquidity, only that you were facing uncertainty. It also requests information about how much revenue businesses lost year over year in the second quarter of 2020. It goes into some proprietary and personal information, such as company financial information. They want to know everybody who made more than $250,000 in your company, and the the challenge with that is that this information could in the future be made public. And SBA has said that those answers will be used to determine whether the borrower was eligible for loan forgiveness. Our argument is that SBA violated both the Paperwork Reduction Act and the Administrative Procedures Act by drafting this questionnaire and by making it a requirement for borrowers to fill out. We don't have any problem with SBA investigating whether borrowers met the criteria for eligibility to not only receive the loans, but in how the loans were utilized. And so over the last 2 weeks, we've been in intermittent dialogue with the Small Business Administration, pointing out that the violations that we're alleging, and asking them to change the questionnaire. We made some progress, but we didn't get as far as we wanted to go, and consequently, the other day we filed suit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia making these allegations, and our prayer for relief is that SBA needs to limit the questionnaire, not ask these personal proprietary questions, and not use it as a base, not use some of the information that they're obtaining as a basis for determining whether the borrower is entitled to loan forgiveness. So we think that filing this lawsuit may accelerate those discussions. I know that on the SBA website today, they've put out a frequently asked question with a response that does demonstrate that they're limiting some of the information. One concern we have about that is, that is a page on a website today. We don't know whether that's going to be there next week, and certainly we don't know whether that's going to be there at 12:01 p.m. on January 20th, 2021. So we're not going to withdraw our lawsuit. We are going to try to force SBA to narrow this document, and so it only reflects the information that Congress set out for eligibility. And that is business uncertainty at the time you applied for the loan. So if we go to the next slide, please. So after the election, there were many pundits before the election that were anticipating a big blue wave, that the Democrats were going to increase their majority in the House, and just the opposite happened. We have, as we stand today, the Democrats have 222 seats, and the Republicans 212. If you do the math, that means there's one seat left to be determined. That is a seat in New York State, where the challenger Republican is 12 votes ahead of the incumbent Democrat. There's another seat in Iowa where the certified winner is the Republican, with a landslide victory of 6 votes. It's possible and probable in the Iowa case that they are going to petition the Speaker of the House to have the House of Representatives, when it's seated in January, make the determination of who the winner is. Under the Constitution, the House of Representatives has the right to determine who is eligible to sit in the House, which will cause a gigantic partisan battle. But for now, the Democrats their majority has been significantly limited. The bottom line is that it's likely for anything to happen in the House, the Speaker is going to have to work with the Republican minority leader in order to pass appropriations bills, any legislation of consequence. And Nancy Pelosi is going to have a really tough time over the next 2 years trying to keep her caucus in line to pass legislation. Since all of you are from Ohio, you likely remember when John Boehner was Speaker of the House, he had a similar problem with the Freedom Caucus, in that he had a hard time getting legislation passed because, in his case, there were 30 or so members of that Freedom Caucus that were not interested in any compromise, and since he could not get them on board, he had to depend upon Democratic votes to get legislation passed. Nancy Pelosi is going to have the same issue. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I think everybody's aware of where the Senate stands today. Currently, we've got 50 Republican senators due to take office in January and 48 Democratic. There are 2 seats in Georgia that have gone to runoff. If the Democrats win both of those seats, it'll be a 50-50 tie, and the vice president will break that tie, and the Democrats will have the majority. And that means the Democrats, for only the 3rd time since 1981, will have both the House, the Senate, and the White House at the same time. So that has that choice as to whether the Republicans maintain the majority or the Democrats take the majority has significant consequences for businesses in particular, and the construction industry, or the businesses in general, and the construction industry in particular. So I'm going to go through a lot of these issues. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Thanks, David. I'm going to go through a lot of these issues and how they square up, depending upon what the Democrats or the Republicans hold the majority of the Senate. And as a preview of this, I should mention that in these two Georgia races, AGC has a construction advocacy fund, and we have embarked on a $250,000 digital ad and social media campaign targeting construction managers in Georgia, sending them messages about the issues and how important they are in this Senate race. We need to generate business community voter turnout, and we need to get them to vote for candidates that are going to support a pro-growth and pro-construction agenda. This is a little unprecedented for us, but as I hope you'll agree, as I go through these issues, the stakes are very high, and we don't want to get to January the 5th after this election and wonder what we could have done to bring about the right outcome. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So if the Democrats get the majority, they've already promised that they're going to end the filibuster. They will pass the PRO Act, which I'll give you a little more detail in a minute or two. The PRO Act is the most comprehensive set of labor law proposals that the AFL-CIO has presented in the last 50 years. It's basically their entire wish list. They will pack the Supreme Court in order to change the current so-called conservative majority on the court. They will allow statehood for the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico so they can get 4 more Democratic Senate votes. And they will be able to use the Congressional Review Act to overturn some of the regulatory actions that the Trump administration has taken in the last year or so. The Congressional Review Act allows Congress to basically rescind any regulation that an outgoing administration has promulgated in the last 180 legislative days of that president's term. 4 years ago, when the Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the White House after President Trump was elected, we used the Congressional Review Act to overturn a number of Obama-era regulations that had onerous consequences for employers. And now, if the Democrats were to run the table here, they would be able to turn the tables on us. So obviously, if the Republicans maintain the majority, we'll have a check on some nominations of the Biden administration, a check on extreme legislative proposals such as the PRO Act, such as the Green New Deal, and the question I have here: will we have status quo on infrastructure? So next slide, please. So let's take a look at infrastructure first. We'll go to the next slide. So our current issues are, first of all, I think you're all aware the Highway and Transit Program was extended until September 30th of next year. This was largely because the House had passed a comprehensive bill. The Senate Environment and Public Works Committee passed a bipartisan, unanimously approved a proposal out of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. The problem with both bills was that neither one of them addressed how you paid for the program because they never went to in the Senate. It never went to the Senate Finance Committee, which has the responsibility for determining how you pay for it. And the The differences between the bills were so great, and the legislative time became so short that the Senate really basically threw up its hands and never addressed the issue, and that's why we have an extension. The good news is that the House passed by voice vote a water resources development bill this summer. Similarly, that bill was unanimously approved by the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, so it had strong bipartisan support. We're trying to get that bill passed in the Senate before the end of the year. I can tell you that the leaders on the committees in both the House and the Senate have already started what is known as a pre-conference, so they can work out differences in advance. And if the bill does pass the Senate, then we can move quickly through a conference and iron out any differences between the two packages. This has an additional $15 billion in Army Corps of Engineers Civil Works projects. And then it's early next year, if there's a stimulus bill, another COVID relief package, is there going to be infrastructure money in that bill? Sadly, what we've seen in the stimulus relief or the COVID relief bills that have passed so far this year, there's been money for airports, and there's been money for transit. The transit money basically has been for operating expenses. It has not been for any new projects. We have been pushing for a number of things. We've been pushing for a broader infrastructure investment in these bills, as well as AASHTO's request. AASHTO's request that the Congress pass a $37 billion program to administer to state transportation departments to make up for lost revenues and gas taxes and sales taxes because of people driving less due to the shutdowns and the pandemic. We're going to continue to press on that, and we hope we're going to have a more receptive ear next year. So let's go to the next slide, please. So, we've already seen the editorial writers and the opinion page columnists talking about if you want to get Congress and the administration to work together, infrastructure is a really good issue for them to embrace, and we couldn't agree more. But we saw the same calls for bipartisan action on infrastructure 4 years ago. When President Trump, who made infrastructure a top priority during his campaign, and as we all know, nothing seriously happened. In some degree because Democrats were not anxious to give President Trump any victories in his 4 years. And so now we hear it again, leaders on both parties saying, yes, we should be able to get together and work on an infrastructure package. But the rub continues to be, how do you pay for it? And that's where people on both sides of the aisle start looking for the exits when that subject comes up. Now, one bright spot here is that the economic advisors that President-elect Biden is going to be bringing in his administration are mostly Keynesian, that understand and believe that investment in infrastructure has a multiplying effect in the overall economy. The bad news is Republicans in the Senate don't hold that view, don't share that view. And then we have another challenge here, and that is, if you take a look at the bill that the House passed earlier this year, the Highway and Transit Bill, which we supported, it requires all projects have to be measured against their impact on climate change, which unfortunately leads to more opportunities to delay or cancel projects that are vitally needed. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, and now let's take a look at some of the labor and employment policy issues that are at stake for next year. Next slide, please. So generally, if the Republicans keep the Senate, they're going to be able to limit a lot of the agenda that the labor community is looking to push, primarily the PRO Act, but it still will permit the Biden administration to try to get a lot of things done through regulatory activity. We'll likely see expansion of paid leave and minimum wage requirements, targeted immigration reforms such as DACA and TPS. They are going to probably tinker with employer-sponsored healthcare systems. And I can tell you that, well, I'll get to that in a second. And then if you look at what happens if there is a Democratic Senate, then it's Katie bar the door. There'll be an aggressive pro-labor agenda, which will, a lot of the things that the administration would have tried to do administratively, they'll try to do legislatively. So let's go to the next slide, please. And as promised, here's a discussion on the PRO Act. So as I mentioned before, this would be Christmas morning for the AFL-CIO if they were to get this passed. I recognize that most of this audience is comprised of union contractors, and the message that we have for our members, we represent both union and open shop contractors, is this bill is or this proposal is equitably shares the pain for both union and open shop contractors, and I hope I'll be able to convince you of that. So first of all, it has what's known as backdoor card check. Under current law, a union demonstrates majority support through a secret ballot election, which starts with a process of demonstrating interest in the union by getting 30% of the appropriate bargaining unit employees to sign what are known as authorization cards. Under this scenario, if the union if there's an election for representation to determine majority support for the union, and the union loses, they can then go to the employees with additional authorization cards, and if they get 50% plus one of the employees to sign the cards, then that demonstrates majority support. The difference is the environments in which this majority support is achieved. On the one hand, a secret ballot election allows the employee to freely exercise their will. The environment where an authorization card is presented to somebody at the workplace in front of coworkers can be intimidating, and the employee might just sign the card just to have the individual or individuals go away, and they don't want to be looked upon as not going with the rest of the employees. Would also have what are known as quickie elections, which would limit, if not eliminate, the employer's ability to communicate with employees about the pros and cons of union representation. For union contractors, it would eliminate the secondary boycott protections, which means contractors would not be able to use the reserve gate to limit the economic or the labor disruptions at a job site. It would also permit intermittent strikes. Generally, under current law, unions can only strike when the parties have reached impasse at bargaining or the employer has committed an unfair labor practice. This would broaden the ability of unions to strike for whatever reason. It would also require or allow personal liability for officers or directors of a company that has committed unfair labor practices. If you are negotiating your first contract after the union has gained majority support and you haven't reached an agreement within 60 days, then a panel of 3 arbitrators will write that collective bargaining agreement for you. And then finally, a few years ago, California instituted some pretty rigorous rules for independent contractor designation. In particular, independent owner operators of trucks would have to be declared in most cases to be employees and not independent contractors, which could have a significant impact on your ability to meet your DBE goals. If some of your minority firms that are subcontractors as providing trucking services, if you cannot rely on them as a separate independent contractor. So let's go to the next slide, please. So some additional aspirations with a Democratic Senate and the Biden administration. We would likely see local hire and skilled and trained workforces requirements on public works projects, expansion of paid family and medical leave. The Democratic platform already has in it that all federal work will be conducted under a project labor agreement, and then a return of responsible contractor requirements on federal projects, or so-called blacklisting. What this means, if you have any labor, safety, environmental discrimination violations, you could be prohibited from doing any federal work. For now, it would not include federal aid, but we're going to keep a sharp eye on that. Next slide, please. So let's look at what happens in the tax area. Next slide, please. So if the Republicans keep the Senate, there'll be very much limitations on what the Democrats can achieve. We're probably going to see some minor adjustments to the tax bill of 2017, and probably not much of else. But if the Democrats take the Senate, they'll be able to pass tax law with only 51 votes, regardless of whether or not they get rid of the filibuster. And the reason I say that is there's a device called budget reconciliation that cannot be filibustered. And a budget reconciliation bill has a life of 10 years. And it allows for tax changes to be made. And that's how we got the tax bill in 2017 passed. So if the Democrats have the majority, we're likely to see what Joe Biden promised during the campaign, which is raising the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%. For those of you that file as S corps and pay the individual rates, they would go to 39.6% at the top. And then also for incomes above $400,000, the cap on Social Security payments would be lifted, and every dollar above $400,000 would be taxed additionally for Social Security. So also they would tax capital gains at death. Next slide, please. So in the regulatory area, and we can go to the next slide. This, whether you liked or didn't like President Trump, this is one area where the administration made significant, in our view, significant positive change. A lot of what they've done to unleash the economy, you can draw a straight line back to some of these regulatory changes. The first thing out of the box that we're likely to see if the in the Biden administration is OCA is going to publish a standard for pandemic protection, and for the construction industry, that's likely going to mean that most people on a construction site may have to wear respirators if you cannot keep them socially distanced. we're likely to see a reduction on the capability of employers to drug test employees post-incident or post-accident. In the waning months of the Obama administration, we had to fight back pretty hard against them on language that they put in a rule that tried to do this. We fully expect that that would return. So then also we're likely to see a reinstatement of the EEO1 pay data reporting requirements. This would require employers to report the pay or salaries of people depending upon different categories, race, gender, ethnicity, etc. We're likely to see the Obama Waters of the United States rule come back. You know, specifically for our industry, we made great gains in environmental permitting and review streamlining. That would likely go away. The Obama administration tried to force employers to measure greenhouse gases on federal and federal aid projects. We're likely to see that. Pipeline construction moratorium or fracking ban, and then block the Trump commercial truck driver hours of service reforms. So, so a lot of the progress we made over the last 4 years would be likely removed with the stroke of a pen. So next slide, please. So here we are, we're at questions. Before we get to questions, I want to thank 2 OCA members for their service on the AGC of America board, Amy Hall and George Palco. George is our vice chair of our highway and transportation division, and because of the pandemic, both Amy and George will be serving an additional year on our board. So we appreciate their help and their contributions. And if there's anything about this presentation that you didn't like, you should complain to them. All right, so who's got questions? And
Steve,
Chris, we have time for questions?
yes, Steve, yeah, it's me. We don't have any queued up right now, but one thing I would like to ask, you know, you painted a fairly bleak outlook when it comes to the regulatory environment. We understand that there's going to be obviously changes, but are there any forces anywhere, you know, that provides some kind of pushback to this extreme regulatory switch?
Yeah. Well, you know, one guardrail is the Senate, if the Republicans maintain the Senate, because you know, they will be able to chair committees of jurisdiction over the regulatory agencies, and they can make life painful for some of those administrators of those agencies. That's one thing. You know, secondly, even during the Obama administration, where they had a very aggressive regulatory agenda, we were able to mitigate some of the damage. You know, for instance, I talked about the blacklisting. I talked about the limitations on employer drug testing. Those were proposals that came out during the Obama administration, and we were able to beat them back. You know, in particularly, what was very helpful on the drug testing issue was the fact that we represent both union and open shop contractors. And we walked into the OSHA administrator's office with a pile of collective bargaining agreements in the construction industry and said, pushed them across the table and said, all of these collective bargaining agreements require post-incident and post-accident drug testing. Now, you know, can't you make an assumption that the unions that signed and in many cases wrote these provisions have done a good job of protecting the rights of their employees to make sure that it's a fair process? And what OSHA was really concerned about was that that if employees knew that they were going to have to face a drug test post-accident or post-incident, that would have a chilling impact on incidents or accidents being reported. And, our argument back on that was, it's pretty hard to hide an accident on a construction site where somebody is not going to report it. And ultimately we were able to prevail. But, those are the kind of things that, and I would have to say, regardless of whether there's a Republican or Democratic administration, we maintain a good working relationship with the bureaucrats that are the consistent actors in all this. We have credibility with them. When we come to them and we point out challenges, we are often able to provide them with a less onerous and less costly way for them to meet the objectives that they have in the proposed rule. So we're able to mitigate the damage in many instances.
Okay, good. Well, that is all of the questions. We don't have any others sitting in the queue right now. So I guess we'll move on with our program. Steve, thank you very much.
Thanks everybody. Thanks for your support. Appreciate it.
Being a part of this, and we appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay, be safe, everybody.
Okay, now we'll turn this back over to Mike.
Steve, I'd like to thank you for being with us today and sharing that important information. We appreciate your efforts at the Capitol and for keeping us updated. Next on the agenda will be Joe Griffin of Griffin Pavement Striping to present the Treasurer's Report.
Good morning. My name is Joe Griffin, and this year I've had the opportunity to serve as OCA Treasurer. As you may know, our fiscal year is from July 1st until June 30th. I would like to start my report by going over our financials from the year ending June 30th. Our audit was completed by Schneider Downs. OCA has managed expenses very well during our COVID-19 environment, and last year ended the year with a positive balance of just over $229,000. OCIA had a positive balance of $92,000. We had a clean audit that also included our Advancement Foundation, OCA Services, and Fix Our Roads Ohio. Now moving forward to our current report from July 1st through October 30th, 2020. The general theme is that OCA is down from the previous year's income, but we are ahead of budget by 7%. With proper expense controls, we are ahead of budget for OCA operations. At OCA, our dues pay for our staff and operations and our chapter activities are essentially self-supporting. Melanie has maintained outdoor chapter activities despite COVID-19. All of those summer activities occurred and have covered their expenses. So I'm happy to say at this time, OCA is ahead of budget and doing well. The OCA balance sheet is strong, and we have a very good cash position. We have adequate funds in our checking and savings to cover current expenses. And our reserve fund has increased by 8.5% over this time last year. OCIA is ahead of budget, has positive cash flow from operations, and has increased its balance sheet from the prior year. Now I'd like to go over a few slides. Our first slide is a dues revenue comparison. And as you can see, though we are behind last year's stellar year, our dues collected are on time with a 5-year look back, and we are ahead of budget. Below that is a monthly dues comparison. This side shows that our funds come in month to month and how they arrive at OCA. This shows a COVID effect, but our dues are trending as normal. Now our current year-to-date operations results. As you can see in the first slide, budget income was ahead of schedule for July and August and is just slightly below in October, with September being neutral. Below that shows our actual budget versus actual expense. And that shows us really being on track with our budget. Our final slide shows our Fidelity investment account. Through quarterly balance tracking, it lets you know where our reserve investments and how they've grown and how they've moved over the years. Thank you for allowing me to serve as treasurer this year, and have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you for your report, Joe. If you have any questions concerning Joe's report, please contact the OCA office. Each year during this meeting, we honor those members who have been actively engaged in the association during their life and have passed away since the prior year's meeting. This year, we have one person to recognize this way. The following memorial resolution is now placed before this gathering of members for adoption. The resolution reads as follows. Memorial Resolution 2020. Whereas during the past year, several of our friends and colleagues in the affairs of the association and construction industry have passed away. And whereas the members of the Ohio Contractors Association wish to acknowledge their gratitude for the service and friendship of their colleagues and to express their sympathy to the bereaved families. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Ohio Contractors Association in its annual meeting assembled this 10th day of December 2020 hereby extend their most heartfelt sympathy to the families and business associates of Leslie R. Hendershot. Her loss of life is shared by all of us. Be it resolved that this resolution be entered into the minutes of this meeting and a copy be sent to each of their families. If you have any additional names to add to this resolution, please do so by typing them into the question and answer box. Okay, so we're not seeing any other names coming up. If there should be some later, please go ahead and get them to the OCA. If there's any further discussion on the resolution, now take your time to type any of the discussion into the question and answer box. Okay, seeing no comments, we'd like to please have you use your poll as it comes up on the screen to accept the motion to adopt the 2020 memorial resolution. And we're having some difficulties with bringing the poll up on our side, so I'm going to move forward. And I think a good assumption is that this resolution has been adopted, and we'll move forward. Now we need to approve board members and members of the Associate Members Executive Committee and the Labor Executive Committee for this coming year. The slate of nominees was put together by the nominating committee and affirmed by a vote of the board of directors prior to today's meeting. Let's start with the board of directors members. With one exception, the proposed board members on this list are renewing their seats for another 3-year term. Those individuals include Waleed Jamal of American Structure Point, who is an associate member representative on the board. Joseph Griffith of Griffin Pavement Striping, who is currently on the executive committee. Bernard Lewis of BG Trucking and Construction. Matt Malone of Kurtz Brothers. Meg Richland of Richland Construction, who is currently serving on the executive committee. And John Strouser of Strouser Paving Company, who will be serving his first term on the board of directors. That completes the board of directors slate. Next are the nominees for the Associate Members Executive Committee and the Labor Executive Committee. All of the individuals who have been nominated are currently serving and are seeking re-election to serve an additional term. For the Associate Members Executive Committee, the nominees are Steve Hammett of the Thrasher Group, Brian James of Rudd Equipment Company, Kevin Keller of the Fideli Group, and Brad Stamler of Leavitt Group Midwest. Labor Executive Committee nominees are Dave Caniglio of John R. Jurgensen Company, Rick Kuzmer of the Mosier Construction Company, Jim Rulin Sr. of the Rulin Company, and Mark Sterling of Beaver Excavating. We will vote for the entire slate of the nominees for the board members and both committees as proposed by the nominating committee in a single vote. At this time, are there any questions? If so, please type them into the Q&A box. Thank you for your acceptance of this slate, and the slate's nominated unless there are an exception after the meeting. The bylaws of the association assigns the election of the organization's officers to the board of the directors. At the same time, the board affirmed the slate of individuals who serve on the board and other committees. They also voted on the association officers for 2021. The officers elected by the board for 2021 are Brad Miller of Miller Brothers Construction for chair of the board, Joe Griffin of Griffin Pavement Striping for vice chair of the board, Meg Richland of Richland Construction for treasurer, Matt Sterling of Beaver Excavating for the first year executive committee member, and myself as immediate past chair. I want to thank all the members who stepped forward into leadership positions for the OCA. Your service ensures that this organization will continue to serve its members for years to come. Now it's my final opportunity to address you as chair of the board. I am honored to have served as your 2020 chair of the board for the Ohio Contractors Association. The last 12 months have certainly flown by fast, and it has been a most unusual year for everyone. Certainly, 2020 will be remembered for many things other than OCA functions, most notably the COVID pandemic. That will make it easy for me to remember what year I served as OCA chair as my memory slipped in old age. But to put it all in perspective, a year ago, we were at the Hilton in person at this annual business meeting and the winter conference. In late January, we held the annual convention in Maui. And in early March, we got into Conaway Conference just in the nick of time before COVID-19 shut down all events. I want to commend Chris Runyon, Dave Rule, and the rest of the OCA staff for developing and directing virtual events throughout the rest of the year to replace regular events such as State of the Association, board meetings, and winter conference. We are fortunate to have a dedicated staff at the OCA that has maintained a high level of service to the industry. For those of you who attended the opening session of winter conference on Tuesday, you heard Lieutenant Governor Husted recognize the great relationships with and the support the association has provided to him and the governor, specifically at the beginning of their tenure. That relationship was strengthened as the COVID pandemic ramped up in the spring. When the governor's office called Chris Runyon to ask if our industry would staff jobs if determined as essential business, Chris confidently responded with a resounding yes. Then it was up to us in the industry to prove Chris right. And the industry responded by adopting to the change at hand and to become and remain pandemic compliant. That was important for our industry and very important for the association. Throughout the year, Chris and the OCA staff did not allow the distraction of the pandemic to keep them from focusing on the important initiatives, such as funding, which was both for state and federal funding, workforce development with I Build America and Contractor for a Day functions, and worker safety for work zones and distracted driving. Like most of your companies, the OCA staff adopted to working from home. Recognizing the efforts of the OCA directors, Melanie was able to start back up with chapters outdoor activities such as golf and sporting clays. Michelle was certainly busy with funding issues, both in-state and federal. Chris Engel, along with Chris Runyon, were kept very busy communicating with ODOT on pandemic issues as it all developed. Linda actively recruited members even without being able to get face-to-face. Not very easy. Mark Potnick continued labor relations and safety efforts. Dave Rule, movie producer Dave Rule, keeping these member events online and keeping us in communication. And Sharon Stanfield for finance, and the organization is in good condition from a finance standpoint, as you heard from Joe's report. I also want to recognize the efforts of Par Peterson and the success of the Advancement Foundation, which this year had contributions exceeding its goal with over $1.5 million pledged and over $1.4 million already invested. And for the first time, made contributions for an amount of $56,000 to workforce development activities, such as Hall of Fame student scholarships, Muddy Boots Awards, Student Service Project in Knox County, Career Educator Job Site Tours, and MacTech. What a success the Advancement Foundation has become. Finally, I want to thank Jim Rulin for supporting my progression through the chairs at OCA, as well as the support from my fellow Rulin coworkers, and my wife Donna for sharing me and my time with the association. And a big thank you goes out to all of our members who contribute to the success of the OCA. Remember, it takes your participation for the association to be effective. Thank you. With the cancellation of our annual convention, we lost our opportunity to swear in the 2021 chair of the board and wish him well as he begins his year in service in that capacity. However, there is no better time than the present to swear in Brad Miller as our chair of the board. Brad and his family members and employees have been active in the OCA since 1956. With such a long lineage of service to this organization, Brad has surely demonstrated his commitment to the tenets of this association and his efforts to further its missions. It is an honor for me to swear in Brad as our 2021 chair of the board. Brad, will you join me on the opposite side of the podium? Brad, repeat after me. I, Brad Miller, do faithfully promise
I, Brad Miller, do faithfully promise
to uphold the Constitution of the Ohio Contractors Association,
to uphold the Constitution of the Ohio Contractors Association,
to work for the betterment of our industry and association,
to work for the betterment of our industry and association,
and to promote prosperity, respect,
and to promote prosperity, respect,
harmony, and the unity of purpose
harmony, and the unity of purpose
for our association and the industry it serves.
for our association and the industry it serves.
Congratulations. Thank you for your service, Brad. The podium's yours.
Thank you. Well, I am honored to be the Ohio Contractors Chairman of the Board for 2021, and more than a little bit humbled to be able to follow the list of people who have held this position before me. I want to start off by congratulating and thanking Mike Chimicella for his year of service as the chairman of the board. You've done a great job, Mike, and it's been fun getting to know you and work with you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad.
Also want to thank OCA and the staff and everybody who helped put together the 2020 Winter Conference for the first time on a virtual platform. I think we all definitely miss the face-to-face interaction and camaraderie, but Chris and the team have definitely taken the cards they were dealt, and sometimes those cards threw a curveball at us. But if you've seen them working behind the scenes here, they're working very hard to make this year's conference overall a very good conference. 2020 has been a crazy year, full of new hurdles and constantly changing workplace due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We were very fortunate that our industry was deemed essential and we were able to continue working. I'd like to recognize the exceptional effort put forth by both the OCA staff to keep us up to date on the ever-changing work recommendations and requirements, and the OCA member companies and their employees who did a great job of keeping our industry working and working safely, which was no small task. Looking forward to 2021, it looks like a few things will remain the same for a little while at least. The COVID pandemic will be around for the first part of the year at least. And our three main initiatives at OCA will be very similar to this past year as well. Those initiatives being funding, safety in our work zones and the distracted driving initiative, and workforce development. First, funding at the state level. Originally, it was thought that the motor vehicle tax, or what we prefer to call user fee, would generate enough revenue to allow ODOT to spend over $2 billion annually on construction to keep its program comparable to the prior years. This past spring, due to COVID stay-at-home order and the reduced travel and fuel usage, led ODOT to predict a 35% reduction in the collection of the motor vehicle fuel user fee revenue. Since then, the traffic volumes have risen a little bit and the loss is not quite as drastic, but as Director Marchbank said in his remarks yesterday, a hit is still a hit. Long term, we know that revenue shortfalls will continue to be affected by the increasing use of electric and hybrid vehicles. OCA will continue to support and encourage a transition to a vehicle miles traveled concept for highway funding, but that's still a number of unknown years away. In the short term, OCA will advocate for an inflationary indexing adjustment to the state motor vehicle user fee. With an index in place, the motor vehicle user fee could bridge the gap until a vehicle miles traveled strategy could be put in place. Funding at the federal level may be a little harder to predict right now. We did get a one-year extension of the FAST Act. The hope for funding from the federal level may have to be a better chance of coming in the form of a relief bill or infrastructure measure to help the economy. OCA's second initiative would be the safety of our work zones and our highways. In ODOT's presentation yesterday, it was stated that the National Safety Council estimates that as much as 25% of all crashes involve distractions. This is putting our work zones at a tremendous risk. Senate Bill 285, supported by Governor DeWine, would make driving with an electronic device in your hand a primary offense, and you could be pulled over for usage. I think we'd all agree that a text or a call could wait when compared to the lives of our workers out in those work zones. Michelle Holgrave does a great job for OCA at monitoring all the bills and activities down at the State House. OCA's third initiative is our workforce development. Few things are more important than our workforce, and where our future workers are going to come from is still a big question mark. Competition for workers is getting tougher and tougher. We need to invest now in our youth and get them interested in the construction industry. Now, it's not just interviewing a college student for a job that's open with your company, but we need to get in front of the high schoolers and even the middle schoolers, their parents and their guidance counselors, and get them exposed to the construction market. It doesn't take as much as you think to plant the seed of interest in some of these young kids, but if we don't do it, some other industry will. Our primary outreach tool for workforce development is the I Build America website that we partnered with AGC of Ohio on. If you haven't seen the website, I would encourage you to take a look and utilize its resources. They are very helpful when it comes to sitting in front of students and giving you the information you need to get them interested. If you need further help, contact OCA staff member Melanie Kitchen. She's very fluent in the website and a great resource for you. OCA's Advancements Foundation is in its second year focusing on its outreach efforts. As you heard from Mike, they are critical to our workforce development. They provide scholarships, they've taken school advisors on job tours, held contractor classroom collaboratives, and involved in the Muddy Boots program that Mike mentioned too. In closing, I would like to encourage you all to get involved with OCA. Jump on a committee, participate in an event. I guarantee you, you will get out of it more than what you put into it. I appreciate your time and attention. Hope you all have a great rest of the week and stay safe.
Thank you, Brad. Nice acceptance speech. Glad to have you on board. At this point in the agenda, we want to provide any member that may have a question or comment on any issue to please bring it before the membership. To do that, please type it into the question and answer box on your screen. Seeing no activity, or there's nothing in the question and answer box, I will adjourn the 2020 annual membership business meeting. Again, if you have any questions regarding any activities or status of the association, please give Chris Runyon or myself a call. At this time, Mark Potnick, OCA's Director of Labor Relations and Safety, will present the annual Jerry Keller Safety Awards.
Thank you, Mike. Also, thank you for your service as board chairman during a most tumultuous and unusual year. Your willingness to adapt and move forward is testament to your great character and positions you well among a long line of leadership that has established OCA as the most respected and trusted advocate for Ohio's construction industry. A job well done in a challenging year, Mike. And now on to our safety awards. 2020 certainly was a different and difficult year for our contractors. On one hand, we were fortunate to continue work as an essential industry during the pandemic. On the other, we had to break new ground in managing a strange, life-threatening virus as we continued work in an industry that already posed many hazards. As always, OCA's contractors took on those new challenges, never neglecting the old, while constantly keeping the health and safety of their employees at the forefront. According to the most recent Bureau of Labor Statistics reports, there were nearly 900,000 injuries and illnesses last year that caused workers to miss at least one day of work. In contrast, 7 of our program entrants, 4 of whom are division winners, had 0. Our 5 division winners worked an aggregate of 1.6 million hours and had only 1 lost time injury among them. 4 of the 5 division winners had 0 recordable injuries. This is the best aggregate performance in the history of the OCA Safety Awards program. Truly amazing. Before I announce the division winners, I want to first recognize those OCA members who had 0 recordable injuries in 2020. Those companies are Boca Construction, J&B Steel Erectors, Mid-Atlantic Maintenance, Mount Carmel Stabilization Group, Skeens Excavating, the Paul Peterson Company, and Turnkey Tunneling. Congratulations. And now we'll move on to our division winners, and I will begin with the smallest division first. In Division 4, which is 50 to 100,000 work hours, we have a tie. Both winners had 0 incidence rates, and the winners are Paul Peterson Company of Columbus with 64,567 hours. Our second winner in Division 4 is Turnkey Tunneling, also from Columbus, with 94,510 hours. Congratulations to both of our Division 4 winners. We'll now move on to Division 3, which is 100,000 to 250,000 hours. This year's winner is Boca Construction of Norwalk with 116,216 hours and a 0 incidence rate. Congratulations. We'll now move on to Division 2, which is 250 to 500,000 hours, and this year's winner is Mount Carmel Stabilization Group of Carmel, Indiana, and area office in Dublin, Ohio, with 343,322 hours and an amazing 0 incidence rates. Congratulations. Finally, in Division 1, which is 500,000 to 1 million hours, the winner is Beaver Excavating Company of Canton with 916,982 work hours. Congratulations to all of our winners for their excellent safety achievements, and thank you to all of the OCA contractors who submitted entries this year. Each of our 0 lost time companies, as well as our major division winners, will receive a handsome engraved plaque to display and commemorate their accomplishments. And now it is my pleasure to turn the program over to Melanie Kitchen, OCA's Director of Chapter Development, for our chapter chair recognitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and congratulations to our 2020 Safety Award winners. Now it's time to recognize our chapter chairs. This association is very fortunate to be able to reach across our state through the work being done in our 9 chapters. This happens as a result of our volunteers donating their time and effort to make sure the Ohio Contractors Association is seen in our communities, our schools, and by other firms within the heavy highway industry that will one day benefit from OCA membership. OCA could not reach out in these ways without the leadership within each chapter and the willingness of so many individuals participating in the chapter executive committees who step forward to serve. First among those are our chapter chairs, especially during this challenging year. They have demonstrated their ability to adapt quickly and continue to lead in their respective chapter activities. We realize these successes could not be accomplished without someone stepping up and making the commitment to help guide these efforts. And for their contributions of time, thought sharing, and dedication to volunteerism, we want to recognize them today and express our deepest thanks.
Our 9 chapter chairs: Akron Canton chapter, Mark Myers, the Rulon Company. Cleveland chapter, Matt Krause, Chazzy Phipps Company. Columbus chapter, Ron White, National Lime and Stone. Dayton chapter, Bill Wolford, Barrett Paving. Eastern Ohio chapter, Josh Reed, Shelley and Sands. North Central Ohio chapter, Scott Stover, National Lime and Stone. Southwest chapter, Chuck Ellers, Encore Precast. Toledo chapter, Jason Baden, Gherkin Paving. And Youngstown chapter, Rob Sullivan, AP O'Horo Company.
We say thank you. Because of your efforts, OCA has succeeded in keeping our membership connected across the state and continues to represent the industry in schools as we encourage our future workforce. We are so thankful for your volunteer efforts toward making OCA's mission relevant to this industry. And now I'd like to turn the program to our Chapter of the Year contest. This is a tradition among the chapters that incorporates some friendly competition to encourage growth among chapters in the areas of member participation, new members, PAC contributions, and hands-on community service projects. While we were able to continue chapter activities, we chose not to hold some events or do some of the service projects for safety reasons this year, leaving it difficult to tally the results of our typical Chapter of the Year criteria. We know it's important to recognize this tradition, and OCA will be using the $2,000 prize that would typically go to the winning chapter and divide that money among the chapter scholarships for later this year. We definitely look forward to carrying on our tradition next year. Now I will turn the program back to OCA President Chris Runyon.
Thank you, Melanie. It is now time for us to recognize those companies that are having a 25th or 50th anniversary of their membership with the Ohio Contractors Association. During the years, these firms have experienced rises and falls within the industry and in the economy, the passing of the gavel for many chairs of the board, and a few changes in the executive director, now called president of the association. Their long-term membership and dedication to OCA is very much appreciated and continues to be a solid foundation from which this association has operated on in the past and will continue to operate upon in the years to come. I would like to first recognize our 25-year members. These companies are Liberty Mutual Surety, Marucci and Gaffney Excavating Company, PDK Construction Incorporated, Raff Builder Supply Incorporated, Safety Service Products Incorporated, and finally the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments. Thank you for your 25 years of membership. And now, our 50-year anniversary members. Our first company is Dr. Edward J. Walter and Associates Incorporated. In 1946, E.J. Walther established Dr. Edward J. Walther and Associates Incorporated to provide clients with a broad range of seismic and acoustic services. The company began providing industry-leading Instatel seismographs to clients in 1989. Today, DRW Associates operates a fleet of over 150 seismographs and associated equipment with a staff of professionals intimately familiar with seismology, geophysics, acoustics, mining, heavy construction, and explosives technology. The typical client base includes federal and state agencies, municipalities, contractors, mining companies, engineering firms, blasting companies, heavy industry, insurance companies, homeowners, and litigators. Our next 50-year member is Shook Construction Company. Founded in Dayton, Ohio in 1926, Shook Construction's heavy civil operations have been the backbone of the company for the last 60 years. Shook is a nationally recognized expert in construction, improvement, and rehabilitation of water and wastewater treatment plants, with past and current experience serving as a general contractor, construction manager, and design builder of these complex facilities. Shook's ability to self-perform on these projects with a stable and skilled workforce is a key component of their competitive offering to the market. Critical to this legacy of succession has been the industry leadership, peer relationships, and labor support provided by their 50-year membership in the Ohio Contractors Association. And our final 50-year recognition award recipient is Strauser Paving Company, Incorporated. Strauser Paving is a road construction contractor specializing in asphalt paving and planning, concrete flat work, and road construction. Typical projects for the company include everything from highways and city streets to parking lots and shared use paths. Strauser Paving has been serving the Central Ohio region since brothers Paul and Niall Strauser established the company in 1954 on Columbus's west side. Paul was killed in a tragic asphalt roller accident in 1970, and Niall carried on until 1982 when John, representing the second generation of Strausers in the business, graduated from Ohio University and became part of the company's leadership team. Niall passed in 1987 and John took on ownership. Today, Strauser Paving is well represented by the third generation of the Strauser family, brothers Kyle, Corey, and Clay. Thank you for your many years of dedicated membership to OCA. We are appreciative for your years of membership and all the time and efforts that these companies have put forth for this association and the heavy highway industry during those 50 years. And now our final segment of each year's winter conference is to recognize 3 individuals who epitomize service to OCA and this industry by presenting the Distinguished Service Award, the President's Award, and the Hall of Fame Award. We will first present the Distinguished Service Award. This award is presented to an associate member who has demonstrated exceptional service to the association and its membership. It is voted on by the Board of Directors, past chairs of the board, and the Associate Members Executive Committee. This year's recipient of the Distinguished Service Award is Mr. Pat Devine of the law firm Ice Miller, LLC. Pat has provided legal services for not only the Ohio Contractors Association for many years, but also for many member firms of the association. He has great depth of knowledge related to the heavy highway industry from the perspectives of technical issues related to construction and business management. His engagement with OCA and its members have resulted in Pat's involvement with many high-profile issues on contractual, regulatory, and legislative fronts in support of Ohio's contracting community. Pat has been particularly effective in providing guidance and assistance to OCA and its contractors who must comply with both Ohio and federal prevailing wage regulations. In addition, Pat has devoted a significant amount of his attention to representing business certified or seeking certification by ODOT as disadvantaged business enterprises. Normally, the quickest step for resolution of a legal matter is a phone call to Pat. In addition to his efforts in the courtroom, Pat is actively involved in OCA's heavy highway specifications, disadvantaged business enterprise, and safety committees, where he is often asked to provide his legal perspectives on a multitude of issues. He has served as a featured speaker for multiple OCA events, including a recent course on engineering ethics. Before private practice, Pat was an assistant attorney general who provided legal advice to the Ohio Department of Transportation. He is the chair of the NetCare Access Board of Directors. NetCare Access is Franklin County's 24-hour mental health and substance abuse crisis intervention provider. Pat also volunteers legal services to the Legal Aid Society of Columbus. He is a past president of the Union County Bar Association. It is common to hear the remark, "I just spoke with Pat," when discussing controversial issues with OCA members. He is a trusted resource in times of challenging circumstances.
Thank you, Chris. I'm humbled to receive this award. I want to thank the staff at the OCA who make this association work. They are the most dedicated group of people to work with. I'd like to give a special thanks to Chris Runyon for his leadership of the OCA and for his focus on the interests of the organization and inclusion of its members. I enjoy working with many of its staff, including Chris Engel, with whom I've had many discussions about competitive bid and procurement issues. The same goes for Mark Potnick, who is a respected source of knowledge on labor and safety and prevailing wage issues. I know firsthand that Michelle Holgreave is a tireless advocate for the OCA members in the State House. Kim Dillon and Kim Bowling and Luann Withy have always been so welcoming and courteous during my visits at the OCA. I have to mention Dave Rule and Melanie Kitchen, who are very adept at making programs like this go forward and have kept the chapter activities on cue. The best advice I received when I first entered the practice of construction law was to get involved in an OCA committee. Not just join, but to actually take something that the committee was working on and get immersed in that work. I first started on the Education and Scholarship Committee, and I still remember being inspired by a young George Palco, who would drive down from Cleveland for those morning meetings. When there was an opportunity to introduce the industry to students, George took the lead by taking the classroom toolkits to Cleveland area schools. He worked personally with the teachers and students. I remember watching an estimating competition at the Hilton Easton, where OCA members coached teams of college engineering students. I was impressed at the dedication, interest, and enthusiasm the judges and mentors, like Mike Rath and Aaron Peterson, had for the team work of the students. The relationships and involvement I have enjoyed with the contractors and service members of the OCA have furthered my knowledge and interest in the heavy highway industry. I have been personally involved in the DBE matters, which have provided me the opportunity to meet and work with truly notable persons in the industry. These individuals epitomize the ability, expertise, and determination their companies bring to the projects each and every day. It has been my privilege to know and work with them. I will close by saying that the leadership and the members of the OCA have a passion for this industry and the organization that encourages involvement in the OCA's many important activities. I wish to say thank you again to Chris and the OCA.
Congratulations, Pat, and thank you for all the wise counsel you have provided to OCA and its members. Next, we will present the Past President's Service Award. This award is presented to an individual that has demonstrated outstanding service for or on behalf of OCA. Its purpose is to encourage OCA members to contribute more service for the association throughout their career and reward them for doing so. Any and every OCA member is eligible, and any OCA member may submit a name to be considered. This award is voted on by the past chairs of the board. This year's recipient of the Past President's Award is Mr. Forrest Cash of Barrett Paving Materials. Forrest serves as Safety Director for Barrett Paving Materials Incorporated, the Midwest Central Division. In a review of past OCA Safety Committee meeting minutes, Forrest's name first appeared in the minutes for the committee on March 12, 1992. He has been actively engaged on the committee since that time. During his long and dedicated service on the Safety Committee, Forrest established himself as a leading proponent of improving safety for workers and the traveling public in Ohio's highway construction work zones. His leadership on OCA's subcommittee for improving work zone safety focused on reducing vehicle speeds throughout the zones. He volunteered countless hours of his time and the use of his company's projects in working with ODOT to evaluate various methods of speed reduction in work zones. His focus on this task, as well as his experience, knowledge, and sincere concern for the safety of others, ultimately led to expanded utilization of portable speed control strips on ODOT projects throughout the state. Countless lives have been and will continue to be saved on Ohio's highways due to his efforts. Forrest has actively participated in OCA Safety Committee efforts to change and improve the current dig laws in conjunction with the Ohio Utilities Protection Services and serves as a member of the Ohio DIG Coalition representing contractors statewide. In addition to these efforts, Forrest has made countless contributions to the industry by promoting ever-improving safety practices for individuals and on project sites, guiding the implementation of personal and work zone safety devices, and enhancing the highway construction industry's reputation for being a safe place to work when appropriate precautions are put into place. It was clearly demonstrated in his nomination that out of care and compassion for his fellow workers, he enjoys the trust and admiration of the workforce and confidence in its capabilities as a safety professional. In his more than 40 years of service, Forrest has dedicated himself to improving the safety and welfare of the workforce, not just at Barrett, but for the entire industry.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the past presidents for this award for my service with the OCA Safety Committee. For the past 28 years, we've tried to make an effort to make a contribution as a contractor and the contractor's point of view. I did have the opportunity to meet several of the presidents as they passed through the committee as committee chairs, and that enabled me a chance to form a relationship and debate some topics along the way. And I wanted to draw particular attention to a few of those folks, one of which is John Kurtz, Paul Peterson, Phil Oglesby, Dan Smith, Bruce Huff, Ann Nerone, and Par Peterson. Each one of those folks helped us along the way. We're very passionate in listening to what we as a committee had to say to try to move the ball forward on the different issues that we worked on, and I appreciate that. Some other folks I'd like to thank, and going back into the history just a bit, Clark Street, of course. Jim Weeks sent me to see Clark Street about 28 years ago, and to meet Dean Hutchins and get started on the safety committee. Of course, along the way, there's several other people in the OCA that has played a very significant role, both in the committee and just in the general welcoming and comfortableness that we enjoy here at the OCA. Again, Dean Hutchins, Gene Collins, very dear to me, Kim Dillon, Luann Weethy, Mark Potnick, Roger from OOPS, George Gillespie is part of the OOPS group too, Walt Pegram, and Jason Broyles. Those folks were important to me because of the working relationship to try to improve the dig laws. And some of my partners in crime, we become very familiar over the years as we worked on different assignments that Mark gave us. And I'd like to particularly thank Bob Robinson, Bob Campbell, Jerry Keller, Dave Canilio, Norm Hosteller, Randy Martin, Jennifer Reams, Al Tambini, and my good friend from the East, Les Hendershot. All of those folks I came to meet and learn to enjoy and debate and worked to try to move some of the issues that face the safety committee for the OCA. Mark was good about giving us assignments. We worked on updating the safety manual for the folks. That was a nice little project. One of the bigger projects was the Ohio DIG law, dealing with the Ohio Utility Protection Services. We all recognize as contractors that we're one explosion away from someone losing their life over unfound or mismarked utilities. And it was a major concern. We all worked on it statewide as a committee, and we spent a lot of weeks, a lot of months, and turned into years changing those laws. And we were successful in making some changes. We still have some things in progress now. And I am still an active member of the Ohio DIG Coalition, so more news on that later. Another project we work on was some of the highway safety items. You're trying to make it safer for our employees with work zones and work zone speed limits. We've worked with the DOT to try to improve those situations. Not only speed limits, but some signage and rumble strips. We worked with Par Peterson to kind of pilot the rumble strip situation on 2-lane roads. And we've also used some of the traffic signals. Some of their tools are out there. And then finally, the last project was the overhead utility signage that we're able to work through and get approved by both the DOT and the MUTCD. It's been fun. It's been interesting. There's been times where we've been up against the wall with our hair bristled up on our neck to make the point of how serious some of these things really truly were, and had colleagues with the same opinions, and we tried to move things forward. And for that, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all of these relationships, and I truly say that I've enjoyed this time with the OCA. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for your service, Forrest, and we wish you the very best as you begin a well-deserved retirement. And finally, we will induct a new member into the Ohio Contractors Association Hall of Fame. This individual must have 20 years of service to the construction industry, been active with OCA at least 15 years, serving those years on OCA's statewide committees, and have contributed significantly toward the stated goals and purposes of the Ohio Contractors Association. And this year's inductee surely fits the bill. This year's Hall of Fame inductee is Mr. Nick DiGeronimo. Nick is employed by Independence Excavating Incorporated, for which he serves as Vice President for Business Development. Independence Excavating was founded in 1956 and joined the Ohio Contractors Association on February 28, 1967. In his career at Independence Excavating, Nick has been an active supporter of the association, contributing much time and resources to the heavy highway construction industry in Ohio, both personally and with the support of the company's employees. As with all future leaders of OCA, Nick began his service to Ohio's heavy highway industry being actively involved with the Cleveland chapter. He has served for many years on the chapter's executive committee up to the present day. In that role, he continues to participate in chapter activities and has encouraged many non-members to consider membership. After his start at the chapter level, Nick became actively involved in the many statewide focused opportunities the OCA is engaged in. Nick joined the board of directors in 2004 and served as chairman of the board in 2012. With that position comes involvement in many assignments on long-range planning, finance, nominating, OCIA, PAC participation, and numerous other committee and association events. Nick's heart lies in the arena of workforce development, and most notably, the Constructor for a Day program, which was founded by his father, Richard DiGeronimo. Nick has promoted active involvement in the program statewide, and most especially with the high schools, technical centers, and colleges in Northeast Ohio.
Well, thank you, Chris. 2020, what a year. You know, I was driving back a few weeks ago from a job, and I got the call from Chris. I just had to laugh to myself. What a crazy year this has been, 2020. I mean, this just tops it off, being elected to the Hall of Fame. It couldn't be more bizarre, but I'm so honored to be here today to receive this award. Knowing how many others have come before me and have created this great reputation for OCA. Leader in, I think, most associations around the country and things that we're all involved with. And I was thinking back to when things were normal, back in February. We ran a great convention in Hawaii, had the opportunity to be there. And you know, here we are 9 months later. You guys are all attending the winter conference, watching on your phones, your laptops. just kind of crazy. But, you know, I was starting to think when I put a few words together about this back in March when Chris had called and Lieutenant Governor Husted and Governor DeWine were talking about the essential industry of construction. And I'm so thankful that we're all part of that. You know, there's been a lot of industries that we're all familiar with, restaurants and retail, that are not so fortunate. So be thankful for being in construction. I am. I think the construction industry is made up of some of the greatest people, most competitive, resourceful people anywhere. And I'm so proud to have worked with a lot of you over the years on a project or with OCA committees. I think the first time I ever heard of OCA, taking you back on my history a little bit, I was 10 years old. 1973, my mom and dad dropped me off at my aunt and uncle's house because they were going to attend their first convention in Italy in 1973. And my first memory of meeting Clark Street when I was still in high school in '82. You Cleveland chapter members remember Pisano's restaurant. That was where Uncle Vic was at his President's Night. That was a lot of great memories. Conventions, my first one back in '95. My dad's in Italy in 2001, or when I was selected in 2012. Just a lot of great memories, and time has gone by so fast, but a lot of great memories. And I've really grown up in this business and in this association. So obviously my lifelong knowledge and respect for the industry really started with my family and my uncles, and especially my Uncle Vic and my dad Rich. You know, they taught me the importance of industry involvement, how good it is for us to be involved and giving back to the association and to the industry. That's why I'm especially proud to be joining my Uncle Vic and my dad in the Hall of Fame. And I've often wondered, there's still a lot of companies out there that I know in our industry and some others that don't belong to an association. It kind of boggles my mind because the cost to me is so insignificant to the value that you gain personally and through the industry. You know, in our case, Independence Excavating, we joined back in 1967 because a subcontractor, as a subcontractor, working for another contractor who, and we've been involved ever since. And many of you know one of my early passions was helping my dad develop the Constructor for a Day program back in 1986 in Cleveland. And I'm so proud that this program has still continued for 35 years. We just finished that year, and it looked a little different this year, but we got through it just like we do in any other construction project. We have our hurdles, but we got through it. So I want to thank the OCA again for naming that event in honor of my dad over 10 years ago. You know, we need people in the industry so much now as we always have, but the trades and the college program. So we hope to keep that going. And over the years, I've been part of many OCA events, beginning with the Cleveland chapter meetings, executive committee meetings, OCA state committees, board of directors meetings, long-range planning, winter conferences, annual convention, and now my time serving on the Advancement Foundation. So I want to thank Chris and Par Peterson for inviting me to that. I get to help hand out some money to the workforce development and all those young people that are coming into the industry. I think that's really important. But the whole theme with all that is really is connected to all of you. It's probably my biggest satisfaction, being part of the industry, part of all you guys working together. So really today, I want to thank all of you again. Industry specifically, I want to thank my mom and dad, my uncles, brothers and sisters, and all our employees at the Independence Excavating and the DiGeronimo companies for allowing me the time to be involved in OCA and other organizations throughout the years. I want to thank the staff, OCA staff, past and present. I mentioned Clark Street. Many of you knew. Great guy, and got me started in this, along with Elizabeth, chapter development director, and right now with Chris and Melanie and the whole staff, and Dave, who's manning the camera here today. So thank you guys. Thank you very much for guiding me all these years. Of course, I want to thank my family, my wife Tony. We just celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary my daughter Sammy and my son Carmen. I think many of you got to meet over the years at the conventions, and we've shared a lot of family memories with the OCA family. So thank you for accepting us over the years. So in closing, I just want to say that I'm going to stay involved. I hope you will. And as we continue to social distance, let's continue to work together. Be thankful for our essential industry. Be safe. Be blessed. Merry Christmas. And remember, there's only 22 days left in 2020. Hopefully we can come together in 2021. Thank you.
Nick, thank you for those great memories and those very kind words. For me personally, it has been a truly enjoyable life experience to work with you and travel around the world with both you and Tony. And thanks to Nick and Forrest and Pat for your selfless service to OCA, to all our chapter leaders and volunteers, and to not only our safety award winners, but to all of those who toil to make our work sites safe from both the natural hazards related to construction activities, but also the recent dangers tied to the COVID pandemic. So now this brings us to the close of our 2020 virtual OCA Winter Conference. I want to thank the OCA staff for their efforts in pulling this event together in a very new way, as well as for all they do on behalf of this organization and its members. I want to present our staff to you at this time. Kim Bowling and Kim Dillon, Chris Engel, Michelle Holgreave, Melanie Kitchen, Linda Pomeroy, Mark Potnick, David Rule, Sharon Stanfield, and Luann Weethy. If we were all live and sitting together, I'd ask you to give them a round of applause at this point in time. So I'm hopeful that you are doing it virtually. There were many new skills that were learned to put this program together, and I thank them, our staff, for their willingness to grow in these new technologies. I want to remind you that each of the sessions that were given over the past 3 days will be available at the conference website for 30 days. A link to that website can be found on OCA's website homepage. Participation certificates for those that requested them and signed into sessions at their beginning and out of sessions at their conclusion will be receiving those certificates electronically in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We hope that a year from now, we'll get to see all of you in person at the Easton Hilton for the 2021 Winter Conference. I can tell you that the contract is already in place to make that happen. Until then, please continue your efforts to keep the coronavirus off your job sites. The first step in accomplishing that is keeping it out of your homes by living according to safe practices, limiting social interaction outside of your home bubble, maintaining social distancing and masking up when you must be out, and frequent hand washing. And if you're sick with COVID symptoms, please stay home and quarantined from other household members. We want to see all of you happy, healthy, and prosperous when we once again gather together in person in 2021. Thank you for joining us.